We are accustomed to thinking of the human mind as a little person inside our heads, guiding our body as if it were a giant robot. But it's much more complex than that. The human mind is layered, divided into sectors, each responsible for specific tasks and aspects of our personality. What we present to the world, our persona, is just a mask that conceals what lies within. Behind a friendly face, there may be a dark heart craving hatred. Behind a smile, sadness may lurk. What we show to the world is not what's inside our heads. Our psyche, in fact, engages in a continuous struggle between opposing thoughts vying for dominance. In the end, the weaker, more absurd thoughts are overpowered by the stronger, more attractive, more pressing ones, and the prevailing thought surfaces in our conscious self. Normally, so-called mentally healthy individuals have a peaceful brain where these currents of thought can develop without causing too much chaos. Decisions are made without further problems. But this is not the case for automatons or brains that are fractured, where every piece of the brain acts like an independent person, where every hemisphere wants its autonomy and at the same time wants to gain control of the conscious self. Each part of the brain behaves like an autonomous body, develops, changes, grows. The right hemisphere handles the emotional, empathetic, and artistic side, while the left deals with the rational and logical aspects. Ever since the brain was split in two, through that surgical operation, every part of the brain, every personality, seeks to gain control of the entire mind. Our psyche, the brain where we reside, is like a large parliament, where various emotions, aspects of personality, and two mysteries battle for control. Today, the personality of the gentleman is in power. Tomorrow the personality of the thief takes control. The day after tomorrow the violent one who gets angry for no reason prevails. It's always like this. We fight amongst ourselves, form alliances, and in the end, one personality prevails. It remains in power until another forms secretly in our subconscious, alternates with the prevailing one, takes control, and so on, starting anew. As I mentioned earlier, the brain is divided into two hemispheres, and I am part of the left side of this great parliament. The 6 strongest personalities have always been the arbiters in the game. The first is the superior, represented by a relentless judge. He tells the brain what to do and what not to do, what is right and what is wrong, what is immoral, what is shameful, what is acceptable. He's a perfectionist, hates imperfections, wants everything to be symmetrical and perfect. When he's in control, we become afflicted with obsessive-compulsive disorder. The second is the SE, emerging from the thalamus, representing our unconscious desires, what our body and mind want without inhibitions and without limits, but also our deepest memories. It's often vulgar, too spontaneous. When it takes control, we disregard the rules, loathe its period, and fight for dominance. It wants to rebel against excessive control. Then there's the childlike aspect. What's left of the child in all of us, the imagination and creative whims that break the rules and create new worlds. Then there are the left and right sides. As I mentioned, the last edition, more recent, is the darker and more violent side. Emerging from the deepest subconscious, it usually emerges only when strong emotions, like anger or fear, take over. It enjoys breaking the rules, not to fulfill desires, but for the sheer pleasure of hurting others. It's sadistic and cruel, and it's kept under strict control. The brain is divided into sectors, with the highest part being the frontal lobe. Here resides its period, which is responsible for controlling what we do externally, how we present ourselves to the world. It's where a part of our personality is processed. It resembles a massive courtroom where every single thought is judged and sentenced by a very strict body of laws. Then there's the rest of the cortex, divided into neighborhoods, each dealing with something specific, as we've already discussed. The left side seems like a collection of offices filled with computers, calculators, typewriters, working tirelessly to compute. The right side, on the other hand, resembles the philosophical academy of the fine arts, full of statues and imagery. Further down is the thalamus, a sort of vast ocean where our memories reside. From there emerges the esse with our desires when they are very strong, and the water boils, and many desires emerge, making it challenging to control. It eventually invades the brain, and the esse prevails, rebelling against the superior. But when a dark sentiment pervades the mind, the water turns black, and no one has ever ventured to the bottom. It's an inviolable rule: never go to the bottom of the subconscious. Never. That's where the things the mind cannot accept, the things we dare not even think about, are exiled to. They are hidden in the depths, where they will never be heard. Things so horrifying that we scare ourselves just thinking we could think of them. For example, everyone has at least once wished to kill someone, but who has ever seriously thought of eating someone? Who has ever considered becoming a Nazi? There are things so terrible and gruesome that we cannot even imagine them, and for this reason, they have been banished deep within, where they will never be heard. Things that terrify us even to think about thinking. This is also where the most traumatic experiences end up, our greatest fears, the terror that shapes us. Sometimes, especially in dreams, they make themselves known, seize control, and that's why I hate the night. This is precisely the problem with this brain. For a few months now, nightmares have increased dramatically, and strange, fearful, violent, sadistic, and perverse thoughts have been spotted everywhere in the brain. It's believed that something is escaping from the deepest and darkest recesses of the subconscious, something we absolutely do not want to set free. As the elections for control of the brain approach, I have been tasked by its period to discover who is responsible. To do so, I embarked on a journey throughout the brain, asking all the greatest players of the mind if they were irresponsible. I've seen flashes many times, of tortured and mutilated bodies, endless screams of torture, voices screaming horrific and hateful phrases, and in the corners of the streets, I've seen tentacles quickly slip into the shadows, but no one knew anything about them. The right hemisphere, full of art and imagination, said it despised those visions. They were too cruel and cynical. The left hemisphere, with its computers and employees tirelessly working at typewriters 24/7, said it wasn't their doing. It was too irrational and uncontrollable. The childlike part had disappeared in recent days, and in recent times, it seemed frightened by something. Rumors circulated that these visions were awakening the ancient fears of the child within all of us, fears that never ceased to influence us. Fear was widespread in those days and held great power in the parliament. At this point, the most likely candidate was Les, but even he knew nothing. He just wanted to have a good time and had no desire to harm others without reason. I descended even further, immersing myself in the sea of the subconscious. I went down and saw older and more crucial memories, saw the strongest desires, but still, there was nothing. Not even the deepest desires were the cause of this malevolence. So I went even deeper into the dark abyss of our consciousness, where the things that cannot even be thought of were locked away, things to be forgotten but continue to terrify and influence us from the depths of our minds, where we can never access. It was like a kind of hell, a series of concentric circles descending downward, all cold darkness with an eternal fire burning everything. Here were the monsters we feared the most terrible and violent memories, the worst fears, from spiders to organ-harvesting kidnappers. And the deeper I went into this infernal funnel, the worse it became. I saw things so terrible descending into the human mind that even the most stoic among the calm were horrified. No one can hide those prisoners forever. Sooner or later, they will escape due to a traumatic event or great fear or anger. And then the brain will be overrun by infernal hordes. This is what we call the apocalypse, a hypothetical moment in which all our rules should collapse, our barriers, our inhibitions, the moment when this hell would be vomited into the brain and set free. I wondered what I would find at the bottom of the funnel, in the black hole of consciousness, the lowest, darkest, and most forbidden point. What was the most horrible, most forbidden thing in the human mind, the terrible monster I would find in there? I descended to the deepest levels, and even the torchlight couldn't prevail against the denser darkness and went out forever. In that moment, I realized I had reached the bottom, and before my eyes was the most monstrous and horrifying thing, even though the darkness covered it, and I couldn't see it. And then I saw it. I saw it clearly. It didn't have the face of a serial killer or a horrifying monster. It didn't have any face because it could have any face it wanted. It didn't have 2 arms or 1,000 limbs. It had all the arms it wanted, at the end of which could appear hands, tentacles, or whatever it pleased. It didn't have a fixed height, a fixed size, or even a fixed shape. It was pure terror. It had no identity. It could be all the things we feared, all the things we found repulsive, horrifying, unthinkable. It had no face. It had all the possible faces that frightened us. It was always him. He was the nightmare monster when we were children. He was the serial killer tormenting us at night after watching a documentary or reading a creepypasta. He was the violence that erupted during moments of anger. He was all evil, all darkness. He assumed the most convenient form depending on the context. It had always been him. He was where we threw all our most horrible memories, all our anger. It had always been him, and now, he was slowly infiltrating the entire brain, capable of taking on all forms. For this reason, he could be in every aspect of our personality, like a silent cancer, capable of hiding and disguising itself. I also discovered whose fault it was. Unaware of all this, the temporal lobe, responsible for hearing, it seems to have unknowingly listened to a dangerous vibration that somehow awakened it, slowly causing it to lose control and rules. It had the entire brain, clouding the controls and erasing the boundaries between the conscious, unconscious, and subconscious. Slowly, our mind was becoming like a dream devoid of all control, and the dream was slowly degenerating into a nightmare. From the depths of the abyss, more and more monsters emerged. Soon, the human mind would become a massive monstrous nightmare, and he would have total control. Trying to escape is futile. My greatest fear has already begun. It was spiders. Now, the hell is gone, replaced by a room with thousands of spider eggs surrounding me. It's over. We cannot fight him because he knows our weaknesses and fears. He has already won. The more we fear him, the stronger he becomes. The more we try to isolate or compress him, the more he returns, even stronger and more determined. The more we try to imagine how to defeat him, the more he devises ways to terrify us. Those who want to fight monsters should be careful not to become monsters themselves, because when you gaze into the abyss gazes into you. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel for more creepypastas. Until the next one.